Just wanted to get an update on Joe and Dwight at this point from your perspective. Obviously, Joe, got some better news than some people had hoped or that feared yesterday. But where they're at both right now.
I'm not convinced Joe will ever play again, no matter what a doctor says. That's just my personal belief. I would say he's for sure out for a month, and if it gets to that point, then he'll redshirt. I think the bottom line is he needs surgery, and I'm not sure that surgery even solves his problem. That I haven't been educated as a doctor, but that's what I believe. So I had already done a little bit of background work through compliance relative to how many games can you play, what's the 50% mark of our season, all those things prior to Tuesday night. And the problem with the injury on Tuesday night is if he can come back, when is it that he can come back? And when he comes back, when will he be able to play? And then when he's able to play, where is that on the calendar relative to when I have to make a decision? And I'm going to do right by Joe relative to his life, not relative to our team season. Dwight did an individual workout this afternoon. In accordance with how he feels 3 hours later will determine whether or not he can go through practice and to what extent he can participate in practice. Whether or not that translates into him being healed enough that he can play on Saturday, I don't know. But that at least that he was out of the boot and able to do an individual workout obviously is encouraging.
Not to block this down with the medical stuff, but getting back to Joe, when you say that, if he does have to have surgery, contusion, does it just add to all the other problems?
Well, that's why I believe what I said. Yeah. It's a bone bruise. I understand. The reason it's a bone bruise is because his knee is shot. You know what I mean? So yeah. So the problem is complicated and doubled because of Tuesday's injury. But the reason he was injured on Tuesday is because of the durability or lack thereof of what led to him even being able to play. So that's not what I'm supposed to say, but that's what I believe. So I always say what I believe.
As far as looking ahead to UW here, Vander was in a little while ago, and we were asking, of course, about the whole thing. UW.
What did he say?
He's pretty politically correct about it, but from your perspective as a coach, when you look at the decision that he made and the passions that are so strong between the two schools, he's had a year, everything has kind of gone by, but how strong of a character does a kid have to be able to make a decision like that, knowing the blowback that he's going to get, and what does it say about a guy like that?
I agree. That's a great question. I think it says a great deal. Well, not because it's Wisconsin and Marquette, just in general. The intensity of a top 40 player in his recruitment, and then to boil it down to the two BCS schools in the state, one of which you committed to, it just happens to be in your town, and then to flip it. And I can assure you that he was the only one initially that was interested in flipping it. And I joke with all of his family about that now. But Vander has great character. In fact, part of what makes Vander a good player is the stubbornness and the aggressiveness that he has as a person. And but the game's so much bigger than that. I'm thankful that Vander's here. Just like I'm sure Coach Ryan would say he's happy that Josh Gasser is there. You know what I mean? So I think that's just part of it. But I'm glad Vander's here for a long time, more than just the game that we played Wisconsin.
Does that help a guy like that grow up faster? Because in terms of what he's had to experience, he's no longer a freshman, I would say.
Well, I don't think his mentality is such, partly because of all that he's been through in his life. I don't think he was a freshman relative to his mentality when he got here, but it definitely encourages your growth. And I think as a player, being a part of USA Basketball this summer, the 20 days he was there, I think that encourages your growth as a player. So I think he's seen it off the floor and he's seen it on the floor since he made his decision to come here.
Buzz, you're a pretty likable guy. When you're out there on that floor in this rivalry, do you get the heat and the hate that maybe some of your predecessors got? Do you hear some things?
Yeah, I've watched all their games. I have one more to watch. that they've played this season, and then last night I watched our game at their place last year, and then this morning I watched our game at our place in year number 1. I don't know if I'm likable. I don't want to be dislikable. And I think most coaches would probably say they don't even really realize what's going on. You know, like I'm watching that game this morning from 2 years ago, and you're just so consumed with what you're doing and what your team's doing and the execution or lack thereof. That's really all you're focused on. And I think there was some things said last year that my wife told me after the fact because of all the stuff that had happened with Vander, and I was like, I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, I didn't feel it. But that's part of fans having a good time and having fun, and I think that's just kind of part of it.
Now that you've watched all those games, how do you stop John Brewer?
I don't think you can. I think that's why he's 5 or 6 months away from being a multimillionaire. I think he's a really, really good player. I think his growth in their program is very similar to Jordan Taylor's. You know, when you look at Jordan was a freshman our first year that I was here, and even when you look at John, obviously I don't know those guys. That's why I never use their names because I don't know them. But those guys have really grown. Those guys have really matured. I think it's the best team they've had since I've been here. I don't think the world knows that yet, but I think they're really, really good. And I think that they'll continue to get better. And I think it's because of the growth of all of those guys relative to their game, relative to the type of system that Coach Ryan coaches. I think they're really, really good.
When you look at what Vander's done this year to date, a little up and down as you would expect from a freshman, just from your perspective, how would you rate his performance through 9 games?
I think he's been fantastic. Love his energy, love his activity, love what he's about. The thing that I admire the most, which I said as we were building a relationship with him long before we signed him, I just love who he is. And again, maybe it's because I'm not from here, which may be the reason I don't hear everybody hollering at me at a game. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff, even when we were recruiting him. I love what he's about, and I think the best attribute for him as a player, which is going to make him even better than he is today, is he demands you coach him at his best. And for someone with his lack of experience up until this point, that says a lot about his wisdom relative to who he is. He wants you to be hard on him. He wants you to coach him. He doesn't want to be good. He wants to be great. And I really like those kind of guys. And they're rare. It's rare to find those kind of guys that every day they want you to go dead at him. And he wants that.
Buzz, we may fixate on the Lures and the Vanders or Jimmy or whatever, but it always seems like there's an X factor in this type of game. And some guy that you never expect. Do you tell some of your other players you can have a moment that you will never forget in this game because of the magnitude?
I think you could say that about every game. I mean, 11 and 30 are their leading scores, but 52 is really good. 21's having a good year. You can never forsake 24. I mean, they have really good players too. And the scouting report, just like anybody else, is going to state those things. But every possession is critical. And so you've got to make sure that you play the scouting report relative to who you're guarding, whether they're the leading scorer or not. They're so big, and they're so great on the boards on both ends of the floor that they're similar to Duke in that when you make a mistake against Duke, you pay for it. The difference between Duke and Wisconsin is when you make a mistake against Wisconsin, you're going to pay for it. It's probably going to be 22 seconds later than when you make a mistake against Duke, because that's just the difference in personnel and the difference in how they play. But you can't take bad shots. Turnovers will lead to baskets. You can't give up second chance points. And not so sure that I wouldn't say those same things the rest of the year if that same question was posed. But I think that's why they're so good. They don't beat themselves, and they'll take it from you if you beat them. You know, if you're beating yourself, they'll take it.
Is it as simple to say then as it's a battle of wills? It's their half court game versus you trying to get out and transition.
Yeah, I think they play a little faster maybe than they have in the past. I think Levin is an engine that runs probably just like 3 did last year, but I think his engine is more relative to how Coach Ryan wants it to go, and in the direction that he wants it to go in. But I think they're a little bit faster. I mean, they're averaging 72 points a game, so they can play slow, but it's not like the game's just going to turn into a 85 or 90 possession game. It's impossible for it to turn into that possession number game because they're not going to shoot it that quick over the course of a 40-minute game.
As you've talked about liking the personality of your roster and the versatility of playing multiple positions, is that key, especially against Wisconsin, given their offense and how guards post and big guys go perimeter?
Well, their Coach Ryan may not say it, but a lot of their guys are similar. You know, what position is Lauer? I don't know. You know, what position is 52? I don't know. That's just guys that can do multiple things are guys that you want to recruit, guys that you want to have on your team, guys that can guard multiple positions. They're of great value. At different points in time in a possession, they're of great value. That's why is Jimmy the best basketball player on our team? I don't know. You know, if it was Shirts and Skins and you had first pick, is that who you're going to pick? I don't know. But his value is increased per possession because of his ability to do multiple things. Which the same thing is true with 30. I mean, so 30 had 24 and 13 last year on Lazar Hayward and Jimmy Butler and anybody else that we could figure out to mismatch him against. You know, and then but that's why I think that's just the way the game's evolving. What position is D Wade? What position is LeBron? What position is Chris Bott? You know, they're just switchables.
Last year, they went 6-2 in the beginning of their conference slate after winning the year before that. You guys went 9-0 in the Big East. Is this game a barometer at all for where you need to be to start conference play?
Yeah, that's when I walked in. I kind of agree with what Jimmy said. I didn't know that, so I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I don't think so though. It's an eternity until January the 1st when we play our first conference game, like dog years from now. And so, partly because of the guys I recruit, they can't remember that far. You know, when it's January the 1st, they're not thinking about, guys, we beat Wisconsin, so that means we're going to beat West Virginia. I mean, hell, I'll forget that too, you know. So, I don't think so.
Going up against an experienced coach like Bo Ryan, what do you look to get out of a game like this as a coach?
I love it. I have great admiration for who Coach Ryan is as a person. Genuinely respect his story. I've told him that numerous times. I like guys that had to start their career riding on a 15-passenger van. And I like guys whose pregame and postgame meals probably came from the same place. And the amount of that was probably less than $5. And it was probably prearranged by an assistant coach. I love those kind of guys. Love his story. I think he's done an unbelievable job. Third in the country as a head coach in consecutive NCAA appearances. He made 12 appearances consecutively in the NCAA tournament. I think it's great. I think he makes you pay for bad decisions as a coach, and I think that you can learn a lot from studying his team and his approach. His approach is different than mine, but that doesn't mean mine's more right or more wrong than his. It's just different. But I have great admiration for what he's about, and I think he's been, in many respects, even though I'm not from here, a lot of what has transpired in Wisconsin basketball, you can trace back to him in some form or another, at all levels. You know what I mean? Not just at Wisconsin, the totality of the state. High school coaches that played for him, non-BCS, non-Division I coaches. I mean, that's Scott Kuykendall likes Bo more than he likes me. Graduated from Platteville. I mean, so he's got them everywhere. He's a damn spy. That's why I walked in the back door.
test your memory here. I'm going back to Joel again, but when you were investigating the redshirt possibility,
Yeah.
Is there a set number you're talking about, the 50%?
Yeah.
Like what
So
is
you
that
can't
benchmark?
you can't play more than 10 games. Okay, that's the, I guess if there's a chronological way that you figure it out, you can't play more than 10 games, and you can't play past the 50% mark of your season. Obviously, we only have 31 games scheduled, so you have to take into account Big East play. Is there going to be postseason? So you don't have a finite number on that. So his deal, he played in 3 games. Didn't play in Kansas City. Obviously, his first game back was Longwood. So he's played in 5 games. He's played a total, I think, of 58 minutes. So he's going to miss Wisconsin. He's going to miss Centenary. He's going to miss Mississippi Valley. They'll go home for 3 days for Christmas. They'll be back on Christmas night. What is he going to be able to do on December the 26th? I think that's when we'll have a more firm grasp of what can he do. Can he play against Vanderbilt? If he can't play against Vanderbilt, he's not going to play 10 games before we have to make a decision. So prerequisite 1 is removed. So now we're playing 50% of the season, which is prior to at Pitt, January the 10th. So his last game, if he could play, would be Notre Dame on January the 8th. And I think after that, Todd, the thing I'm trying to figure out is to remove myself as a coach and think about it as his parent. And I know his parents extremely well, but that's also why Joe's followed me all over the world and back, is what's right for him. And what's right for our team is we have Joe, because he's going to play 14 to 16 minutes that are distinct in the energy that he gives us that we can't get from anybody else. Even mixing and matching, we can't get. And you think, well, he's just he's a 5-point, 4 rebound, 15-minute a game guy. Well, how many games are we going to play over the next 30, 25 games that's going to come down to 5 points and 4 rebounds? You know what I mean? And so I want to do right by him. I 1,000% want to do right by him. And not listening to Ernest, not listening to Scott, not listening to Dr. Gertel, not listening to Steve Cottingham. I'm going to do what's right by him, because that's how I'm going to be held accountable. And that's not being disrespectful to any of those people. It's a bone bruise. You can write that, but it's deeper than that.
Right.
It's deeper than that. And so we'll see. I mean, there's nothing we can do right now. Rehab. On December the 26th, I'm going to begin to feel pressure. Okay, we got to figure it out. And what is figure it out? Can you practice 30 minutes a day and play 15 minutes in the game? And is that right by you to finish your career that way? Right by our team, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see.